Hello everyone. This is the second part of the story I'm Voldemort. Chapter 11, Gringotts, Part 6. How long was I gone? Tom asks the second he returns. Huh? What do you mean? You didn't go anywhere. Alec says, giving Tom a confused look. Alec could easily guess that Tom's behavior is linked to the test he took. When he placed the Pendragon Air ring on his finger, his eyes glazed over for a short time. After a few moments, Tom's eyes returned to normal and he asked Alec a stupid question. Never mind. Tom says as he stares into space for a moment. Alec knew something happened but didn't push for any more information. If Tom wanted to tell Alec what happened, he would have said something. Although the curiosity was gnawing at his soul, he decided to keep his mouth shut about it. Would you like me to explain what you have access to in the bank now that you are the heir to 3 houses? Seeing as Tom didn't want to elaborate, Alec moves on with his job. Yes, that would be helpful. Tom stops staring into the air and listens closely for Alec's explanation. Well, as the heir to these houses, you have no access to the vaults until you take up your position as lord. Once again, you will be able to take up your lordship after graduating from Hogwarts or any other magical school for that matter. As for the businesses that you now own, you can't manage them until graduation, but you can appoint me to do so in your stead. All of the businesses, except Ollivander's one shop, are out of business already. Although that doesn't mean that your vaults can't make any money, as you own a lot of land. The land in Diagon Alley and even the Wisengamot building. You could start charging them rent if you wish to do so. Also, I would like to start investing your money into other businesses that I've been watching carefully, and possibly buy some more land as well. He says with a greedy smile. He knows that the more money he makes Tom, the more wealthy he becomes in return. Of course, he wants to start building up Tom's accounts as soon as possible. He wouldn't be a goblin if he didn't. I'll let you manage my accounts, but don't start charging rent just yet. I don't need people looking into the owner of the land. Other than that, I fully support investing money into future businesses. I may send you a list of Muggle businesses that I want to invest in as well. I just have to do some research first. Tom says, knowing he has to stay low for a while. Although I want to see their faces when their first rent bill arrives, I can hold myself back until you're ready to start coming into the light. Alec nods as he's more than happy with just being able to start investing and buying land. 2 more things are left to explain. First, a trust vault is automatically open for orphaned heirs, so although you won't have access to the vaults, you will be receiving enough money to live fairly lavishly. Second, you have full access to all properties that are listed on the sheet. Alec explains. Could you get me a list with the addresses of each property I own? Tom asks as the sheet only has the names with now locations. Yeah, I could also have some port keys made for the properties that are too far for your house elf to apparate to. For a price, of course. He says, greedily. Yeah sure, just tell me the price first. I'm not sure of the market value for port keys. Tom asks. With the list of properties being so large, the amount that has to be made would cost around 700 galleons. Give or take a few sickles and nuts. He says after calculating the cost. All right, have the port keys made and I'll pick them up another day. I'll pay for them when the work is done. Also, be sure to label each of them. Tom says as that's a cheap price for so many port keys. That's easily done. Do you have anything else that needs to be done, or can we start setting up your trust vaults? Alec asks. No, I was going to open a vault, but the trust vaults should cover that. Can we just make one vault that receives payments from all 3 houses? Tom asks, knowing that would be easier and simple. Alec snaps his fingers and a large book appears before him. He schemes it for a moment and nods his head. There's nothing in the bank's rules that say you can't, so sure why not? Alec agrees easily. He then waves his hand and the book disappears, and in its place, a contract appears. This is just a standard contract to open up the vault. It says that the bank isn't liable for any dangerous or dark artifacts that you store in your vault. If any of these artifacts should damage the bank's property, the vault would be charged for said damage. Other than that, there will be no charges to keep the vault open, but there is a one-time fee of 100 galleons for opening it. The fee will be taken care of by your house's main vaults. Aluk explains and holds out the contract. Tom takes the paper and reads it over. Seeing that nothing is wrong with it, he signs in all the right places and hands it back. The contract also states that Tom will receive 1,000 galleons a month from each main vault until graduation. That's 3,000 galleons a month, and the first deposit is already made. Not bad for someone that not long ago was a penniless orphan. Once Aluk takes the contract, he also signs it and makes a copy for Tom magically. An old-looking key appears in Aluk's hand, and he gives it to Tom. That is the key to your vault. Don't lose it, as the fee to replace it is a steep one. You know what? Lose it as much as you like. Aluk grins evilly. Greedy goblin. Tom mutters under his breath and checks the clock for the time. It's getting late. I should go home and get some sleep. Sure, but I need your address before you leave. I need to call you when the port keys are done, and for other official business as well. Aluk asks and Tom gives him the address to Wool's orphanage. I already told him that I'm an orphan, so there's no use hiding it. Tom thought. After giving Aluk his address, Tom was permitted to leave the bank through an area that allows apparition. Better to stay out of the public eye as much as possible. The second he returned to the orphanage, Tom sent Mimsy to Diagon Alley in hopes to find a book on occlumency. Chapter 12, Occlumency. When Mimsy left the orphanage, it was already late, so Tom wasn't very hopeful. With how late it had gotten, he wasn't sure that many stores would be open anymore. After waiting for a while, she returned with a pop holding a single book. Mimsy had to go to the bad evil alley to find this. The nice stores don't be sellin' books on brains, I guess. She says and holds out the book as if it were a treasure. Thanks, Mimsy. How much was it? Tom asks as he takes the book for her hands. 300 gallons. Mimsy says as she holds up 3 fingers. Tom could buy other books as well, but he wants to wait until he's searched his properties for any libraries. Also, his number one focus is on occlumency right now. He needs to get his mind on lockdown as soon as possible. The information he has is extremely valuable, and can't be allowed to fall into the wrong hands. That could easily ruin Tom's future plans, while simultaneously putting a target on his back. He'll have time for book shopping later. Before going to bed, Tom read the first chapter of the book as quickly as possible. He didn't want to try anything yet, as practicing something without fully understanding it could cause problems. As he read, Mimsy brought him tea and some snacks to munch on. When he finished the chapter, he went straight to bed in order to get as much sleep as possible. The second his body sank into the sheets, the weight of everything that happened today hit him and he fell asleep instantly. The next morning, Mimsy woke him up an hour before sunrise. Tom asked her to, as he needs to optimize his time as much as possible. The second he woke up, Tom went straight to the book again, hoping to finish it as quickly as possible. When the sun rose and the day began, Tom had speed read his way through every chapter of the book. He learned everything and remembered it fairly well. Occlumency is the protection of the mind from legilimency, which is essentially mind reading, but it's also so much more. You have to first meditate to find your mindscape, and then start to build the defenses. The sky is the limit when it comes to what you can make to defend your mind. Whether the defenses are strong depends completely on the user's imagination. Since Tom finished the book earlier than expected, he started meditating as explained in the book. It explained a form of meditation called Mind Palace meditation. With a few breathing exercises, the right positioning, and some tips and tricks, Tom is supposed to find his inner world. Once he started meditating, Tom got lost in it and blocked out everything else. Time passed around him and Tom didn't even realize it. Suddenly, the matron walks into the room, as Tom didn't show up to breakfast. Mimsy was already hiding out of sight as to not spook the muggle. The matron thought that he may not be feeling well, so she came to check on him and bring his food straight to his room. When she saw Tom sitting on the bed unmoving, legs crossed, and eyes closed, she didn't understand what he was doing. Could this be brought on by some sort of brain damage? She thought, as she has no idea why he would just sit there like that. "Thomas, are you awake?" she asks, and Tom breaks from his trance, returning to the world around him. "Yes, I was just trying to calm my mind. I must have fallen asleep," Tom says, making the best excuse that he can think of. "I brought your breakfast, as you didn't show up," she says, and hands a tray of unappetizing food to him. "Are you feeling well?" "I'm feeling better than yesterday, but my head is a bit sore and I'm kind of tired." Tom lies to get more time in his room. If he suddenly feels perfectly fine, he will be expected to leave his room for mealtimes and other events. Right now Tom's in a perfect position to meditate. He can spend all of his time meditating, as it will be seen as an injured person resting to heal. Tom plans to milk his non-existent injuries more than any soccer player ever has. After a short conversation, the matron leaves Tom to rest and recuperate. Tom looks at the disgusting slop that was brought to him and sneers. The food somehow had the effect of scaring away his hunger. There's no way he's eating this crap anymore, not when he has Mimsy to get him some edible food. No, not just edible, but delicious food. He then sends Mimsy to a nearby restaurant to steal him some food. The food the matron brought was swiftly zapped into nothingness by elf magic. Once Tom filled his stomach, he went straight back to meditation. No time can be wasted when Dumbledore will arrive within the week. Tom spends the rest of the day meditating, but he doesn't find his inner world. He feels as if he were close, but he's no expert on the matter. The next day was also spent meditating. The matron would come to check on him and Tom would keep playing up his injury. Right when he was about to give up for the day and call it a night, Tom's consciousness appeared in an open plain of grass. The blue sky above him has clouds scattered here and there. What caught his eye immediately was the floating orbs everywhere. They were hovering in random positions all around him. "This must be my inner world," Tom thought as he looks around in wonder. Based on what the book said, the first step is to collect and organize the memories. Tom could tell that the orbs are his memories, so he knows what has to be collected. The question is, how should he go about collecting them? He could just walk around and pluck every memory out of the air one by one, but that would take far too much time for his time frame. The book said that the only limit is your imagination, so what if he were to imagine something to help him speed things up? An idea forms in Tom's mind and he imagines a tool that will assist greatly in collecting his memories. Suddenly, a red vacuum backpack appears on Tom's back. This is the Poltergeist 5000 from Luigi's Mansion, except it's been modified to collect memories instead of ghosts. Tom admires his handiwork for a moment and turns on the vacuum. "Let's get this done quickly so I can move on to the next step," Tom thought as he gets to work. Chapter 13: Vacuuming and Sorting Memories. In a beautiful grassy plain, an 11-year-old boy with black hair and bright red eyes could be seen wielding a vacuum cleaner. He has the hose aimed upwards as it sucks in the floating orbs that can be seen scattered everywhere. He's been absorbing memories for about an hour now, and it's about time to sleep. Almost a quarter of his memories have been absorbed already. Tom turns off the Poltergeist 5000 and checks out his handiwork. What is said in the book to take months will definitely be finished by tomorrow. With a bit of imagination, the collection of memories has been quite easy. As Tom was wondering how to leave his inner world, He awakens from his meditation in his room at the orphanage. I guess that I just had to think of leaving and I can leave my inner world. Tom thought as he starts to feel mentally exhausted. The book said that this could happen depending on how much you get done in the inner world. Tom just cleaned up a very large amount of his memories within the shorty span of an hour. That would tire anyone's mental capacity, let alone Tom, who's only 11 years old. Tom didn't even try to stay up and sinks into bed to get a good night's sleep. The next morning, Mimsy woke up Tom at 3 a.m. as usual, but Tom's body demanded more rest after last night's tiring mental work. Tom ended up listening to his body and going back to sleep until the sun peeked into the room and woke him yet again. This time he felt a lot more refreshed and ready for the day. He was still a bit mentally tired, but he can't waste any more time. Tom had a bit of time before the matron would usually come to check on him and bring up his slop. He spent that time in the inner world using the Poltergeist 5000 to suck up another 25% of his memories. Only half remained to be collected now. After an hour of work inside the inner world, Tom left as he could hear the matron calling him. As he opens his eyes, he feels that mental exhaustion again. The matron is by his bedside and hands him his breakfast. She has already grown used to Tom's weird ritual of what he calls clearing his mind. After asking about his health, the matron leaves to tend to the other children. Tom feels far too tired to go in and do anything in his inner world, so he takes a break and eats a delicious breakfast that Mimsy stole for him. The disgusting slop that the matron brought was taken care of by Mimsy's elf magic. Once Tom finished eating, he decided to take a small nap. This way he will have some energy to go back into the inner world and get to work again. Tom didn't wake up until late into the evening. The matron came to bring him his lunch but saw him sleeping peacefully and left him alone. The matron brought him dinner and left him to his own devices as usual. Tom then swore to himself that he would push himself to finish collecting the orbs before bed. This way it would be finished and he could sleep in tomorrow because he'll definitely be worn out after this. He goes in and spends the next 2 hours just sucking up orbs. Once he finished, he knew he would probably pass out the second he left the inner world. Before leaving, he looked around at the open plain that is no longer clouded in memory orbs. He felt like he just cleaned his house and it's finally finished. Everything is cleaned and nice. It's truly a good feeling. The second he left the inner world, he didn't have much time to think, as he fell back and passed out into a deep sleep. Mimsy was already instructed to let him sleep until sunrise again. When that time came, Tom didn't wake up on his own. Mimsy had to wake him up, and he awoke with a huge headache. The throbbing in his head was extremely annoying and painful. Mimsy popped away and picked up a pain relief potion she bought from the apothecary in Diagon Alley. The potion worked like a miracle and Tom's pain vanished almost instantly. I love magic, Tom thought as he goes through his usual morning ritual. After dealing with the matron and eating breakfast, Tom goes straight back into the inner world. He now has a vacuum filled with memory orbs that need to be organized. This isn't a step in the book, but it's a step that Tom decided to take. In many fan fictions he's read, the main character organized their minds and they gained total recall. The ability to remember nearly every event of their lives in extreme detail. Tom wanted to test this and see if it worked. Even if it doesn't work, organized memories can't possibly be a bad thing. Tom takes a minute to come up with a game plan and finally decided on how he will organize his mind. He imagines a top-of-the-line laptop from 2020, and a USB cable that can go from the Poltergeist 5000 to the laptop. He then plugs the vacuum into the computer and hopes his plan works. Pressing the power button in the computer, it boots up and Tom logs on and creates a password to log on. Once he's logged into the laptop, he finds the Poltergeist 5000 in the Devices section and double-clicks it. A folder filled with names of his memories along with dates and the amount of space they occupy appears. Tom creates a folder on the laptop called My Memories and moves everything from the vacuum to that folder. He made sure to cut and paste so nothing is left on the vacuum itself. After moving the files, he wills the vacuum out of existence and it disappears. He then sorts the memory folder by date and boom, he's done. Perfectly organized memories finished in a single trip to the inner world. Tom didn't feel any different at the moment. No perfect memory, eidetic memory, or anything like that. Tom decided to see if anything would change once he's outside the inner world, so he willed himself out and woke up from his meditation. The second he opened his eyes, Tom's eyes rolled back and he fainted instantly. Chapter 14. Perfect Recall and Time Skip. Seeing her master wake up and swiftly faint, Mimsy didn't know what to do. On one hand, she wanted to take her master to St. Mungo's hospital, but on the other hand, she knows her master wants to stay hidden. That night Mimsy decided against her better judgment to leave her master alone and hope he would wake up soon. Although, she did take the time to tuck Tom into bed and make sure he was comfortable. When the matron came to check on him that night, she saw that he was asleep and attributed it to his recovery. She left him alone that night and swore to bring some extra food tomorrow morning. He missed lunch and dinner, after all. Tom didn't awaken until the next morning. He woke up to the matron shaking his shoulder lightly and asking him to wake up. She was slightly worried that Tom had possibly gone into a coma. As Tom's eyes opened, a sigh of relief escaped her lips. She may be wary of the boy, but she doesn't wish harm on him. The second Tom returned to the conscious world, he had a huge headache. This one made the last one feel like nothing at all. He wanted to scream and cover his ears, as the matron's voice was like nails on a chalkboard to his sensitive mind. Tom wanted to test to see if he had perfect recall, but the pin was all he could think about. His best shot to end the pain is to get the matron to leave and send Mimsy to purchase another pain relief potion. Tom gathered all of the willpower he has and bared the pain as he talked the matron into leaving him alone. The problem was she kept asking questions about his health. After placating her worry and getting her the hell out of the room, Tom immediately Allened for Mimsy. Mimsy. Pain relief potion, now. Tom says and Mimsy appears by his side with a potion already in hand. Tom snatches the potion from her hands and downs the whole vial in seconds. When the pain vanished, he sank into his bed for a moment and enjoyed the feeling of his head no longer throbbing. Is Master okay now? Mimsy asks with a worried expression. Yes, how did you get the potion so fast? Tom asks. I bought a bunch in case Master had pains again. Mimsy says with confidence swelling in her chest. Well, good thinking. Thanks for thinking ahead like that. Tom says and pats her bald head. Mimsy swells with happiness at her master's acknowledgement. She can't seem to understand how her parent bad masters couldn't be like hers. She wouldn't have to worry about them so much if that's how they were. Now that Tom isn't feeling a pain worse than death in his mind, he tries to think of his memories and can remember everything. He can remember his first birthday as Gregory. He could remember everything from that day. The smell in the air, how he was feeling, what he ate, the temperature. He could remember every second of that whole day. Not just that day either. Every second of every day as both old Tom, Gregory, and new Tom. He remembers it all. It worked. Tom said out loud with an excited smile. Today is the day that Dumbledore should arrive. In preparation for his arrival, Tom has built up as many defenses in his mind as he possibly could. He wanted to build a castle at first, but that would take far too much time. Small things like the Poltergeist 5000 can be willed into existence fairly easily, but a whole castle would take far too much time. Time that Tom didn't have, as Dumbledore was to arrive within the week. That certainly doesn't mean that the defenses Tom built weren't strong, if not stronger than a castle. He just wanted the castle because he thought it would be cool to have. Tom's first line of defense is a giant force field type shield. He got the idea from the shield used to protect Wakanda in the MCU movies. It covers his entire inner world, which isn't that big in the first place. The shield should at least keep out some passive legitimacy probes. The next thing Tom did to protect his mind is build an underground bunker. In order to enter the bunker, you have to enter a 32-digit code on the keypad. The door to get in is 8 feet thick and is made with the same properties as adamantium. The bunker isn't big, as Tom didn't have time to go too crazy. Inside the bunker is a small square room with a desk and chair. The desk has a computer with a crazy long passcode that Tom doesn't even remember. This whole bunker is a decoy for anyone that enters looking for information. It's trapped as well, so if any unwanted guests break in, they will be trapped forever in Tom's mind. The real hiding place for Tom's laptop full of his memories is a hollowed-out tree disguised as any other. Even if someone knew to look inside a tree to find it, there's a small forest of them. It would be like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Also, Tom has the computer hooked up to a sort of imaginary Wi-Fi. If anyone were to type in the wrong password or try to take it out of Tom's mind, the information would be uploaded to another laptop hidden 10 feet under a patch of grass and deleted from the stolen one. This is all Tom could get done before the fateful day that Dumbledore would arrive. Now Tom is sitting in his room patiently awaiting the old meddler's arrival. Today is the day that Tom would get the slightest clue as to whether this Dumbledore is good or bad. Many stories that he's read as Gregory would portray him as an evil man that acted as a kind grandfather. Tom would like to believe that this was just the author making an enemy other than Voldemort for the main characters to face off against, but they could have been correct for all he knew. It's best to expect the unexpected and hope that he isn't some evil overlord. Also, it doesn't matter whether Dumbledore is good or evil, as they will most likely be enemies anyway. The second Dumbledore speaks with anyone in the orphanage about Tom, he will no doubt be wary of him from that moment on. That wariness will grow as Tom will most likely be sorted into Slytherin. He is the heir to Slytherin, after all. He should be sorted into his ancestor's house. While he was pondering these things, a knock could be heard at the door. The matron walks in a moment later with a crooked-nosed, bearded, elderly man trailing behind her. This is obviously Dumbledore. He doesn't look as old as he did in the movies, and he even has a little of his auburn brown hair still. He's dressed in grey robes that any other wizard would wear. I expected him to wear outlandish robes like the stories I've read portray him to wear. Dumbledore examines Tom with vigilance. Although on the outside he simply smiles in a grandfatherly manner, on the inside he's worried about enrolling this boy into Hogwarts. Just based on the handful of children he has spoken to since his arrival, his impression of Tom Riddle is anything but good. Even the matron expressed her wariness of the boy. Dumbledore did not like what he heard one bit. The second he entered the room, he sent a passive legitimacy probe towards Tom as their eyes met. He needed to see if what the children said was true or not. To his immense surprise, the probe failed. No, it was blocked. The shock and suspicion that graced his face was not missed by Tom, nor was the attack on his inner world. He felt the probe bounce off his shields and smiled inwardly at his handiwork. Chapter 15, Fateful Meeting. Tom, this is Professor Dumbledore. He's here to speak with you about the school he works for. The matron introduces Dumbledore with a smile on her face. The matron would be more than happy to send Tom to this man's school, as he would be away for the majority of the year. She wouldn't have to worry about the other children's safety as much with Tom in a boarding school. Tom pretends not to notice Dumbledore's probe and smiles towards the matron. Oh, does it have anything to do with the letter I received? Tom asks curiously. You received a letter? I don't remember you getting one. The matron looks confused, but simply shrugs it off. Maybe I forgot, she thought. Would you mind giving us some time alone? I wish to speak with the young Thomas about what the school offers. Among other things as well. Dumbledore asks, and the matron looks to Tom to see what he wants. Would you like me to stay? She asks out of courtesy. No, I think I'll be all right. I'll call if I need you for anything. Tom says, and the matron leaves the room to attend to the other children. The room falls into an awkward silence as Dumbledore sits on a spare wooden chair. He looks at Tom for a moment before speaking, but as he was about to open his mouth, Tom spoke first. "So, are you a wizard?" Tom asks, pretending to not already know everything. "Why would you think that?" Dumbledore asks with a fake grandfatherly smile. "You have a long beard. You're wearing robes. You have a big nose. Witches have big noses, don't they?" Oh, and the letter said it was from a place called Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. If you're here on behalf of the school, then you're most likely a wizard. Either that or you're some oddly dressed pedophile that tricked the matron into getting into a young boy's bedroom. Tom says innocently but smiled inwardly at the shocked and appalled face Dumbledore made at his last words. "I can assure you that I'm a wizard. The letter should have informed you of my arrival. I'm here to answer any of your questions, and take you to purchase supplies for the school year," Dumbledore says, trying to ignore and brush past the pedophile comment. "Oh, that's good. I can't wait to start learning magic. Hey, the letter says first years can't have brooms. Why would we need brooms? Are we supposed to clean with them or something?" Tom asks. No, in the magical world, flying on brooms is a way of transportation. They are mainly used in a game called Quidditch. You'll learn about it when the season starts at school, Dumbledore explains. After a long session of Tom asking Dumbledore a lot of dumb questions to annoy him, Tom agrees to attend Hogwarts but first asks a majorly important question. He asked Dumbledore to show him a magic trick, as Tom called it. Dumbledore looked visibly offended that Tom would call real magic spells magic tricks. Being compared to an average Muggle magician didn't sit well with Dumbledore, but he still showed him a bit of magic anyway. It is his job to explain the wizarding world to Tom, and showing a bit of magic is a part of that explanation. He pulled out his wand and cast a simple Lumos, which is a spell that produces light, and a bright light appeared above his wand. Speaking of Dumbledore's wand, it's a simple wand. Nothing to write home about. Although, Tom knows that he is supposed to get the strongest wand in the world when he defeats Grindelwald. Maybe I should find a way to get the wand instead. It would be such a waste to allow such a fine magical focus to fall into a lesser wizard's hands. Although, at the moment, I'm the lesser in this scenario. I'll have to get powerful enough for when Dumbledore and Grindelwald duel. Tom schemed inside his head as he conversed with Dumbledore. Another fairly important question popped into Tom's head, so he voices it to Dumbledore. "I have to buy the supplies, right?" Dumbledore nods to Tom's question. "You do know that I'm an orphan, right? I have no money. Also, does attend school cost anything as well?" Tom asks, pretending not to be the richest man in the magical world. "Well, maybe the second most rich person. Nicholas Flamel has a stone that can turn any metal into gold. Tom can't compete with that just yet." Dumbledore then went in to explain that orphans get free schooling and supplies. Everything would be charged to the school, so Tom has nothing to worry about. After answering all of Tom's questions, Dumbledore escorted him to the Leaky Cauldron. Of course, they informed the matron on their way out. Tom got to ride the infamous night bus, which was more of a roller coaster than a bus ride. When they arrived at the Leaky Cauldron, Tom was escorted through the pub and into the back where the entrance to Diagon Alley resided. Dumbledore tapped the brick wall 5 times, in 5 different places. The wall opened magically and the busy street of Diagon Alley appears before us. Witches and wizards were bustling through the alley from store to store. Tom stares at the view with a bit of fake wonder. Not that the place wasn't marvelous, but he's already seen the alley when he went to Gringotts. No one on the street pays much mind to them as Dumbledore leads Tom through the packed crowd. Dumbledore isn't famous at the moment, as he'll gain most of his fame through defeating Grindelwald. The Second World War hasn't even started yet, so Tom doesn't have to deal with a politically strong Dumbledore, which is why he was so happy he wasn't born as Harry Potter. Having a powerful enemy is one thing, but having an enemy that has tons of followers that hang off of his every word is a completely different story. Alright, the first stop is to get you some proper wizard's robes, Dumbledore says, and leads Tom to a shop titled Madame Malkin's Robes for All Occasions. Chapter 16, Wand. Dumbledore escorted Tom to each and every store to get his school supplies. He bought his books, clothes, cauldron, etc. The only thing that Tom couldn't get was a pet. The school didn't cover pets as they weren't essential. He couldn't even get an owl to deliver mail, as he could just use the school's owls if needed. Tom swore to himself that he would come back after Dumbledore left and browse the pet shops. Isn't Nagini still in human form by this point? Maybe I should find her and recruit her before she gets stuck as a snake. I may be able to come up with a cure for her blood curse sooner or later. Tom thought as he remembered the original Voldemort's pet snake. After getting all of his supplies, the only place left to go is Ollivander's wand shop. Dumbledore, being the nosy man that he is, followed Tom straight into the shop to see what type of wand he would receive. The inside of the shop was a bit dim, and behind the desk was lined with bookshelves. Each shelf is packed with boxes that house wands made by different members of the Ollivander family line. As they walked inside, Dumbledore hung back by the door as he knows of Garrick Ollivander's odd need to prank his first-time customers. Tom walked in and made his way to the desk. He knew that Ollivander would try to scare him, or at least he thought so based on what he's read. As he made it to the desk, no one had appeared and the shop seemed empty. A silver bell sat on the desk for customers to call for service, so Tom tapped the bell a few times. A moment after hitting the bell, Garrick Ollivander popped out from behind the desk. He seemed to be in his 40s or 50s with wide, pale eyes that almost shined through the darkly lit shop. Was he just sitting down there? Tom thought as he stared at the odd wand maker before him. Garrick tisked at the fact that he got no reaction at all from his prey, but let it go and went into business mode. Maybe begins the desk isn't the best of hiding spots, Garrick thought. Welcome to Ollivander's wand shop. I'm Garrick Ollivander, and who might you be? Garrick asks as he ignores Dumbledore completely. Thomas Riddle. Tom says flatly and decides to get to the point. So, how does this whole thing work? Do you find a wand that's pre-made to match me, or can I order a wand to be made especially for me? Tom asks with a quirk of his eyebrow, but before Garrick could open his mouth, Dumbledore speaks up. He will be getting a pre-made wand. His wand is being paid for by the school, and the Hogwarts doesn't cover custom wands. Dumbledore says, and Garrick nods. Although you can't purchase a custom-made wand today, you may come again at any time to place an order. That is if you have the spare capital to afford it. Custom wands aren't cheap, after all. Now, which is your wand arm? Garrick asks as he gestures to Tom's hands. I'm ambidextrous if that's what you're asking. Tom replies as he moves both of his hands. It's true. After getting perfect recall, Tom found that he could use both hands to write and draw perfectly. It's a skill that should come in handy during wizarding duels, as he could switch wand hands on the fly. I see. Garrick nods and starts studying and measuring Tom's hands. After taking Tom's measurements and memorizing every line in his hands, Garrick starts unloading wands in Tom one after the other. Some cause destruction the second he picks them up, and others just simply do nothing at all. A few of the Tom felt a small connection to, but nothing strong enough to warrant buying it. With every failed match, Garrick's smile widened to the extreme. He loved the difficult customers the most. With the vigor of someone half of his age, Garrick poured through his stock of wands with mad glee. That's it. That was my last wand. You are my favorite customer, you know that? Not once in all of my family has a customer ever gone through so many wands without a match. You sure know how to please a wand maker, Tom. Garrick states. Boxes and wands lay strewn about the room. Every shelf on the whole shop was empty, as they went through every one. While they were going through the wands, Tom got to hold the wand that the original Voldemort bought. It was one of the few that he felt a slight connection to. He guessed that since he was no longer the old Tom, that wand wouldn't be a perfect match anymore. So, what does this mean? Do I get a custom wand or something? Tom asks. Yes, we'll have to do that. Garrick says and sees Dumbledore about to speak up. Don't worry, the price will be the same as a pre-made wand. This is the trickiest customer in the history of my family's shop, after all. Garrick says with a crazy smile plastered on his face. I'm honored to hold such a prestigious position. Tom says and Garrick nods as if it really were such an honor. Follow me. Garrick said and they started to follow him. Not you. He says towards Dumbledore, who was following along behind Tom. Custom wands are more a private thing. You can wait up here if you like. Dumbledore looks slightly annoyed at being barred from the process but agrees because this isn't his shop. He has to follow the rules like anybody else. Tom smirks at being able to ditch Dumbledore for a while. Every second spent with him felt like Tom was being studied and he didn't like it. Garrick escorted Tom to a door that leads to a basement. The basement was even darker than the already fairly dim shop above it. The walls of the basement are lined with shelves filled with wand-making ingredients. The center of the basement has workbenches and various other tools that are presumably used in wand crafting. I'm going to gather some wood and we'll start with that. Garrick says as he flicks his wand and many pieces of wood fly to an open table. Place your hand on every love of wood and tell me which one you feel most connected to. Tom nods and does as he's told. He walks to the table and places his hand on every piece. He felt a minor connection to a couple of them, but none of them felt as perfect as the one he now holds in his hand. It's a bone-white block of wood that's grasped tightly in Tom's hand. It was the last wood he grabbed and the second he touched it, he felt as if it belonged to him. Ah, I see. Garrick nods as he can already tell that that's the wood Tom is most compatible with. That is yew wood. Yew wands are among the rarer kinds, and their ideal matches are likewise unusual and occasionally notorious. The wand of yew is reputed to endow its possessor with the power of life and death, which might, of course, be said of all wands, yet yew retains a particularly dark and fearsome reputation in the spheres of dueling and curses. However, it is untrue to say that those who use yew wands are more likely to be attracted to the dark arts than another. The witch or wizard best suited to a yew wand might equally prove a fierce protector of others. Wands cut from these most long-lived trees have been found in the possession of heroes quite as often as of villains. Where wizards have been buried with wands of yew, the wand generally sprouts into a tree guarding the dead owner's grave. What is certain, in my experience, is that the yew wand never chooses either a mediocre or a timid owner. Garrick explains and Tom nods as he knows that he isn't mediocre or timid. Tom looks at the piece of yew in his hands and couldn't help but nod. The wood matches him perfectly. He's the descendant of a hero, King Arthur Pendragon, and 2 dark arts masters. Well, Morgana would have been a mistress. They were definitely notorious and he would someday be as well. All right, what's next? Tom asks as he hands the wood over to Garrick. Next we find what core would best fit your wand. He says and waves his wand yet again. The leftover woods fly back to their original shelves and different types of wand cores take their place. Tom already knows the drill and doesn't have to be told what to do. He walks forward and places his hand on every single one of them. The problem with the cores is that Tom felt a strong connection to more than one of them. One is a bunch of white hairs, and the other is a small finger bone wrapped in black cloth. When Garrick saw Tom react to 2 different cores, he wasn't too surprised as dual-core wands aren't that rare in custom wands. Although what shocked him is the cores themselves. You are truly an odd child, aren't you? Garrick says as he eyes the cores that Tom brought back to him. Why is that? Tom asks as he raises his eyebrow. First you have a connection with you, which is already fairly rare, but now you bring me 2 cores that are the exact opposite of each other. He says as he motions for Tom to hand them over. This is a bunch of unicorn tail hairs, he says as he snatches the hairs. While this is the finger bone of a Dementor that one of my oldest ancestors gave his very soul to retrieve. He snatched the bone and looks at the two with wonder in his wide eyes. Somehow, your perfect wand is a mix of the purest of light creature, the unicorn, and the darkest and vile creature, the Dementor. Pretty horned pony and soul-sucking monster. Do you not see how odd that is? Chapter 17, Wand, Part 2, plus shopping alone. After explaining to Garrick that he has no idea why he would react to such an odd pairing of cores, Tom was told that the wand would be finished within a couple of hours. Dumbledore had some sort of meeting at the school, so Garrick promised to escort him to the night bus once they were finished. He was extremely reluctant to leave Tom alone, but he had to get to the school. He was already late for a staff meeting and couldn't waste any more time. After explaining to Tom about the train to Hogwarts and how to get onto platform 9 3/4, Dumbledore gave him his ticket and left the shop in a hurry. Tom didn't know if Garrick would rat him out or not, so he stayed in the wand shop the entire time. He wanted to explore the different shops, but that could wait for another time. After almost 3 hours of waiting for Garrick to finish his wand, he came up from the basement with a black box in hand. He seemed very proud of himself as he held the box out for Tom to take. Garrick reminded Tom of a child that drew a picture they were proud of and wanted their parents to put it on the fridge. When Tom opened the box, Garrick smiled with pride at one of his most challenging and beautiful creations. The wand is bone white with a bone-shaped handle. Once the handle ends, the wand gets much thinner. The lower half of the wand after the handle has some odd holes here and there. The wand looks like someone carved a wand out of a human bone. This is truly one of my finest creations. 13.5 inches long, made out of you with unicorn hair and Dementor bone dual core. It may very well be the most powerful wand I've ever created, Garrick says with the utmost pride in his work. Hearing this, Tom is truly happy. It may not be the Elder Wand, but it sure as hell is better than most wands out there. Better yet, he didn't even have to spend a dime for it. Sometimes being an orphan has its perks. After admiring his new wand for a few moments, Tom takes it in his hand and something amazing happens. Power of which the likes Tom has never felt courses through his body, as the tip of the wand lights up and two transparent beings appear as if conjured by the wand. One is a bright white unicorn, and the other is a dark black Dementor. They appear before Tom for a few moments before returning to the wand. This truly is my finest masterpiece, Garrick mutters as the creatures disappear. What just happened? Tom asks as he stares at his wand curiously. You gained acceptance from both of the creatures whose parts make up your dual core. That isn't extremely rare, but to have two opposites accept you at the same time is truly astonishing. Not to mention that one of them is a Dementor. Garrick just stared at Tom for a moment before opening his mouth. You, Thomas Riddle, will go on to do great things. I don't know whether those things will be terrible or wonderful, but they will be truly great, he says as he eyes Tom as if trying to figure out his every secret. After Garrick's prophecy of Tom's greatness, he escorted him to the street outside the Leaky Cauldron and called the night bus. Tom rode back to the orphanage alone as he pondered over the next step he should take. He needs to start studying and familiarizing himself with the culture of the wizarding world, especially since he'll most likely be sorted into Slytherin. He can't go around acting like a muggle whilst surrounded by a house of purebloods. When he arrived at the orphanage, Tom carried a trunk filled with his Hogwarts supplies to his room. The kids in the orphanage give him a wide berth, as they want nothing to do with Tom. When he arrives at his room, he closes the door and calls for his trusty house elf, Mimsy. Tom yells as he doesn't have to worry because the room is soundproofed. Master be needin' anythin'? Mimsy asks as she appears with a pop. Yes, we are going back to Diagon Alley. I got all the things on my list, but now I wish to go shopping for myself. Also, I have received a letter from Aluck yet, so we can go and check on the status of my port keys," Tom says as he places his trunk down at the foot of his bed. "Okay, does Master want to be going now?" she asks. "Yeah, the matron should be cooking dinner right now, so we have maybe an hour before she comes looking for us," Tom says as he grabs a hold of Mimsy and they pop away. They appear at an exclusive apparition entrance to Gringotts Bank. Alec managed to get Tom registered to use it since he wishes to keep his identity a secret. Of course, Tom has his mask on just to be safe. After speaking with Alec, Tom left the bank with a bottomless bag filled to the brim with port keys. Each one of them labeled for different properties that Mimsy's apparition just couldn't reach. Tom also pulled out some money for his shopping spree from his trust vault. Tom then spent the day browsing the shops and buying anything that caught his eye. When it came to books, he made sure to not buy any really old ones, as he most likely already owns them. He just has to sort through the many properties he owns and find them. The problem with that is that he owns so many properties that it would be a waste of time for him to do the work himself. Tom does have Mimsy to do the work, but she's only one elf. "I need to start recruiting more elves to get some work done," Tom thought and decided to try calling for some later. If that doesn't work, he'll write to Alec and see where he can purchase some elves. He also bought every book on the list that Alec gave him during their first meeting. These are books on the laws and everything to do with the government. He needed to know these things as no one would teach him, and he has noble houses to represent. Tom also bought some books on etiquette for noble wizards and random things that would come in handy for his future plans. Other than books, Tom also visited a few pet shops. One of them being Elop's Owl Emporium, where he bought a Eurasian eagle owl, as he thought it looked interesting. Tom didn't want to use the school's owls, as he didn't know whether anyone would read his mail. With his own owl, at least he'll know that it won't listen to anyone but him. Other than that, Tom didn't buy anything else. He did go to a few other pet stores and see some snakes that were bad-mouthing their keepers, but Tom already had 2 snakes in mind that he wanted: Nagini and the basilisk in Hogwarts. There's no need to purchase some lesser reptiles when Tom could have the top of the food chain for free. As for Nagini, he would have to see if she interests him once he meets her. Tom also bought himself a better trunk, as the one the school bought for him is annoying to lug around. The new one has a weight reduction feature as well as a shrinking feature. Once shrunk down to the smallest size, the trunk can be worn like a charm on a bracelet. That will definitely be more convenient than dragging around a big and heavy trunk. By the time Tom bought the trunk, it was about time to head back to the orphanage. The matron should be finished with dinner by now. Chapter 18. Time Skip. Time Skip September 1st, 1938. Today is the day that Tom will be headed to King's Cross Station to take the train to Hogwarts. He's spent the month of free time doing many things, but he mainly spent his time studying. The second he arrived home from his shopping spree, Tom tried to call for more elves like Mimsy, but no other elves answered his call. Seeing that his trick to get elves isn't working anymore, Tom wrote a letter to Alec asking how to go about purchasing more elves. He received a letter the next day stating that the Gringotts sells house elves. It also had some addresses to other elf dealers, as Alec called them, but emphasized the high quality of Gringotts elves. Since his business dealings with Alec are backed by an oath of fairness, Tom decided to buy the elves through him. Elves aren't that expensive either at just 100 galleons an elf. Tom put in an order for 20 house elves. He had Mimsy drop off the 2,000 galleons, and she returned with 20 healthy-looking elves. Tom wasted no time and became their master as fast as possible. Once they were sworn servants, Tom told them the same ground rules as Mimsy and put her in charge. Hearing her master make her the head elf, Mimsy's chest swelled with pride. She is her master's first elf and he trusts her the most. She wanted to cry tears of happiness, but didn't want to look bad in front of the new elves. She would save these tears for later when she's alone and her reputation among her new subordinates wasn't on the line. After laying down the law, Tom had an important mission for his elves. He sent them to every one of his properties to organize and catalog any books, artifacts, and other important items. He needed to know what he had and what he needed. This would probably take some time, even with the help of magic. Tom owned a lot of properties, after all. He also wanted them to clean up the properties as well, but that could wait for another time. While the elves were working on his properties, Tom pondered on whether to use his wand or not. He knew that the Wizengamot puts a trace in every wand, but he wasn't sure when that trace is placed. In the Harry Potter movies, Hermione bragged about practicing magic at home before her first year. That must mean that the trace isn't on the wand until the children enter Hogwarts. This means he can use his wand now, but he'll have to find a way to remove the trace when he returns to the orphanage during Christmas break. Other than worrying about the trace, Tom wondered about wandless magic. Should he try to train it or not? He decided to wait and study a bit. Once he understood magic better, he'd try to work on wandless and maybe wordless magic. Until then, he'll practice with his wand. During the month before school, Tom spent the large majority of that time studying and practicing magic. The first book he picked up was a book that explains what magic is and how to use it. The book stated that magic is based on the imagination, willpower, confidence, and hard work of the person wielding it. Imagination to visualize the outcome. Willpower to bring that imagination to life. Confidence that what you want will happen. Last but certainly not least, hard work to practice until the spell is like second nature. There's no such thing as talented witches and wizards, just those who work harder than the rest. The first time that Tom practiced a spell, he took the words in this book to heart. He drew his wand, imagined a bright light, and said the words Lumos. The tip of his wand flickered for a moment, but nothing grand happened. He believes that he has the imagination, willpower, and confidence down. He just had to do the hard work. He dedicated a sizable portion of his time to practicing spells until they worked 100 by 100 times. After these sessions of constantly practicing spells, Tom would be exhausted. This is when he learned that magic is like energy inside of him. Once that energy has been used up, he gets extremely tired and can't do any more spells until it's refilled. Maybe my magic capacity will increase the more I use it up. I could swear I've read a fan fiction that said something about that. Tom thought and decided to keep tiring himself every time he practiced. Since he would get tired after his magic practice, Tom would save that for the time before bed. Throughout the day, he would read and absorb as much knowledge as he possibly could, and with his perfect recall, that wasn't so hard for Tom. He also wanted to read some advanced books, but he decided to start slow and build upwards. Once he understood magic, he can delve into things like alchemy, rituals, and other high-level studies. For now, Tom focused on the Hogwarts curriculum. Although, the curriculum is a bit different from what Tom remembers from the story. He didn't notice at the time, but one of the books on his list of school supplies was a book on the dark arts. Does this mean that Hogwarts teaches dark arts? Tom thought. The only explanation for this is that Dumbledore removed that class once he was appointed to the headmaster position. Either that or this is a slightly different version of the story, but Tom will go with the first explanation until he sees more evidence to the contrary. Tom didn't just study magic, no, he also studied 2 other subjects. These subjects being the magical government and pure-blood wizarding etiquette. He learned a lot about both subjects. On the subject of the Ministry of Magic and the Wizengamot, Tom learned that the Ministry of Magic is the main governing body of the magical community of Great Britain, which consists of England, Scotland, and Wales, along with Ireland, with the intention of preservation of magical law. The headquarters of the ministry is located in Whitehall, in central London, deep underground. It is headed by the Minister for Magic, who is an elected official. While the Wizengamot is wizarding Britain's High Court of Law and Parliament. It's the legislative and judicial branch of Wizarding Britain and predates the Ministry of Magic itself, dating back to the days of the medieval Wizards' Council, which was during the time of Tom's ancestors, Slytherin, Arthur, and Morgana. Its administrative headquarters is located in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement of the Ministry of Magic, whilst the trials took place in the dungeons of the lower levels. Although the Minister of Magic has a say in the Wizengamot's proceedings, through a single vote as any other member has, the leader of the Wizengamot is the Chief Warlock. The Chief Warlock is a position someone is nominated for and voted on by members of the Wizengamot. Speaking of members of the Wizengamot, it's split into two sides. The members of Parliament that have been voted for by the people, and those that sit in hereditary seats. Tom has 3 of these seats waiting for him upon his graduation, which means he will hold 3 votes. The Pendragon, Lefay, and Slytherin seats. The Gaunts have long been banned from the halls of government due to their crazy behavior, so there's no Gaunt seat waiting for him. As for the etiquette, Tom needed to learn it for his inevitable time in Slytherin House. He learned and practiced basic etiquette that any pure-blooded wizard would be taught from birth. Many things aligned with Muggle etiquette, like unless you are physically prevented from doing so, always stand when you greet someone. Only those of a higher social standing can sit while greeting someone of lower standing. Also, handshakes aren't really a thing in the wizarding world. You simply nod in greeting and move on with whatever conversation that proceeds. The list goes on and on with minute details of what to do and what not to do. While Tom was pondering over the past months, he hears a pop and an elf dressed in clothes with the Hogwarts seal appeared. Maybe I should get my elves a uniform as well. Tom thought as his elves are wearing rags at the moment. Tommy Riddle, sir. The elf says and Tom's eyebrow twitches. Hopefully, my elves didn't hear him and start calling me that as well. This marks the end of part 2 of the story I'm Voldemort. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.